It was called Mount Chillaid, the tallest mountain in the game. Several players had suggested I climb it, and now seemed as good a time as any, as my motorcycle was destroyed and I had received a bunch of money I needed to deliberate on what to do with. In my experiences as Francisco, I've found that trying to force some action or goal upon him is not nearly as rewarding as reacting to the world as it presents itself. And as such, the mountain I had naturally ended up launched towards seemed all too fitting for the next destination. After crossing the lake, I was met by Rizonal, a player sporting a red sweater vest and a matching face mask. I assumed he had been waiting there, as he had asked of my identity, and I told him I was planning on climbing the mountain. He asked if he could come too, which was obviously fine. I wasn't the keeper of the mountain, just another player on his own personal journey. The beginning of the hike was easy enough. Francisco passed some backpack-clad hikers as he jogged on his way. Rizonal asked me to wait for him to catch up, and it seemed a little unfair to ignore him, so I waited. He would soon pass me up, and pass up a parachute I would not. I certainly didn't mind having some sort of preparation or plan to get down. On the way up, Being Hero Supreme would fly in on his transport helicopter. To be honest, although I had accepted the company of Rizonal, I was beginning to feel a little watched. I had set off to climb a mountain and was already feeling underprepared, having seen people equipped with hiking backpacks and appropriate climbing attire, and now it was getting difficult, the incline exceeding that which was easily navigable. Francisco starts to trip, and as his ascent slows, I'm told Rizonal had died. I had seen him only moments before, and the mountain had already killed him. It was only a few moments later before Francisco took a bad step and died himself, an act that was considered by the game suicide. I expressed my concerns, Rizonal agreeing, as we continued to try to ascend. At one point, several tumbles later, Rizonal gets a ride from Being Hero Supreme over to my position, and continues to climb in a way that Francisco has difficulty managing. Suddenly, this experience becomes one I'm all too familiar with, seeing others find success on the exact same path as I struggle to simply move forward. It happens again and again, and it's embarrassing to constantly fall and see others make small tasks of the ones I find so difficult. I'm glad they don't laugh directly at me. Being Hero Supreme actually fires flares down the mountainside, I'm assuming to help show the incline or path we should take. I try, but this ultimately leads to another death, even on the path that seemed the safest from his lofty position. And obviously I could have given up and fallen down the rest of the hill or asked for a ride to the top, but I hadn't crashed my motorcycle into a lake next to a helicopter rental booth. No, this was a challenge that presented itself, and I had embraced it, and as much as it seemed impossible to achieve, I knew I would just have to keep trying, dying if necessary, until I got to where I had set off to go. If there were only shortcuts to every destination, including this, the most daunting, why should I commit to anything at all? These were the truths I convinced myself of as I tried to follow the flare guidance of those who could see the path in front of me. I would die a total of 5 times, respawning in a place I wasn't aware of, and as the sun was almost completely set, I saw a fence. Till now I had followed my own path, my own inclinations, and after several deaths I found myself not only near the top, but actually adjacent to a well-traversed path. It then occurred to me that I clearly wasn't the first person to consider climbing this mountain. In fact, it was such an apparent goal that work had gone into simplifying it for those who were actually interested. I then gladly accepted the path that had been presented. Rizonal had found it too, and soon we were at the top. After a few photographs, I went to use the telescopic viewer, but I did not have any money on hand. $3 million in the bank and no ATM nearby, I asked Rizonal if I could borrow $1, to which he responded with a thumbs up, probably because he too kept his money in the bank, so he wouldn't be robbed of it. I would definitely have to come back. Some other players started to show up in their helicopters, Being Hero Supreme of course, and Hanakuzo 179, and we looked out into the city. As I tried to see if there was a local voice chat option, I noticed some of the players were firing off their flare guns. I had chosen not to buy one due to its violent potential, and ironically was killed by a misfired flare. Hanakuso immediately apologized and was forgiven, and I'm assuming he was somewhat embarrassed, seeing as the only thing he had said before was that he intended to be peaceful. He was very apologetic and of course forgiven, although he was soon after killed by Being Hero Supreme. Violence, even accidental, spreading around. Regarding such retribution, I could not concern myself. They were present in all part of the journey, like the path Francisco eventually found or the sun that eventually set. From my perspective, it was all a series of choices everyone present was permitted to make on their own. I didn't mind dying, especially at this point, seeing as the mountain had killed me several times, although I have to admit it was an inconvenience. Rizonal suggests we parachute off the highest point, a goal that sounds as entertaining as any, and I follow him to the edge of the cable car support. He makes sure we're all prepared with a parachute. When I asked him how to deploy it, he tossed in a little dig about how it had the same controls as firing a weapon. It was actually exactly that easy, I would learn, as I watched him fall to his death. Bean Hero had been behind us, but I didn't see him anymore, and I was once again alone in this vast world, as I slowly drifted towards the ground. I called the insurance company about getting a replacement motorcycle, and as my phone rang unanswered, it felt all too symbolic for my experience. I was shrouded in the darkness of night. I had swam the largest body of water and climbed the tallest mountain, dying several times in the process and afterwards. Now I was falling slowly, trying to connect to the world while taking my own path. I had been rewarded somehow and by some means, and by all means, my best option was to enjoy the world as it presented itself. It felt now, more than ever, important to stay in the moment, appreciating the exact world and experience Francisco had, even by myself. As such, I was growing especially fond of being up in the air.